Summer League is upon us, and we get some more positive news on the Brooklyn Nets side of things as Kessler Edwards is officially back with the roster, as we all assumed he would be. We're going to talk about expectations for a lot of the young players for the Brooklyn Nets in this upcoming 10-day little summer competition window, as it will prove critical to how the Nets move forward with or without the superstars. And that's all coming up right after the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. Oh, hi there. It's the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day over there. You're going to find Doug Norrie. He's the owner-operator of DFSR. For all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel, he's got you covered. Me, I'm Adam Armbrecht, and I'm breaking down the New York Football Giants over on the One Giant podcast with my boy Andy Mack. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free on all those great platforms. And Doug, let's talk some positivity here, as there was a weird moment this offseason where Kessler Edwards was not on the roster. And then thankfully they got that all taken care of. It seemed like that was going to be the case, but now officially Kessler Edwards back with the team, ready to get into Summer League.
Yeah, Keith Smith reported earlier today that he's from Spot Track. That Kessler Edwards had finally re-signed. It was a multi-year deal. It was confirmed by a couple other sources. Mike Scotto got it. Chris Mulholland got it. There was a bunch of other guys that jumped onto this news that Kessler Edwards was going to return, multi-year deal. We had talked about how and why this had been delayed, which I guess we can talk about a little bit here in a second. But the good news was, I think we all pretty much knew that he was going to be back in some form or function, right? Like, I think it seemed like the understanding was that, that it was sort of advantageous for the Nets, at least, to delay this a little bit, considering their current sort of situation, but that long term, or at least for a couple of years, Kessler Edwards was going to be back in the mix. Although I'm with you, though, where it was like a little bit weird to be like, hey, because they had a team option for $1.5 million. And then they had extended the qualifying offer, and they're like, psych, maybe we're not going to do that right now. Right. We'll see how this whole thing goes. But yeah, good news that for Edwards to return, because this is the kind of guy you feel like you kind of stole in the draft a little bit, and you hope that he can continue to progress along the lines of sort of the archetype that the Nets need right now.
Yeah, and when you talk about it seemed a little odd, but and the funny thing being that in this offseason, we're okay, are the stars definitely gone? Are they going to drag this out? Could they return? No matter what direction you go in, Kessler Edwards makes sense for this team. And that's where you go, well, let's just make sure that he's definitely coming back. Because I think there could be players on this roster, even young players, that you would go, oh, if they weren't going to bring back player X, well, that kind of makes sense if they're moving off of it, because the development may not be worth it over the next couple of seasons as they go into a full-blown rebuild. Whereas Kessler Edwards, to your point, it's not just what the Nets need, it's what every team needs. A 3-and-D wing that they got in the second round feels like a steal when you see the way he performs last year. And then you hope for the development when you think about the Summer League. If he continues to grow here, you'd like to think whatever his ceiling is going to be, we didn't even really get like to scratch that surface, at least not as. And that's probably the next question I wanted to ask you was, did we get the full sample size? Like, once you got teased last year with Kessler Edwards, it's almost like, well, now give me more of them. Like, give me all Kessler Edwards. Let's just see how much we can move the needle on him in a surprising rookie year.
Yeah. So, from when you're trying to find some of the back end of the second round, and just as a note, like when you're drafting the first round, your contract's basically guaranteed for the first 2 seasons. That's why we're not having the conversation around Cam Thomas, why we're not having the discussion around DAYRON Sharp. Like where Kessler fell in the draft, it becomes you're on like basically a 2-way, and then you're basically playing for the minimum from that point on. He'll probably still be on the minimum here. Like it will just be over multi-years to just give him some stability over a couple of years. And that's like sort of the goal, right? It's like lock in some timeline here for both sides, and then the way you go. With Kessler, it's funny about him. He came out of the gate showing you a few things that you wanted to be able to see right off the bat, which is he's got length. Like you can't teach length. Like he just is long. And so that's just something that you can't like make in a lab. Like you can't coach length. And then the second part with that is he was able to shoot the 3-point shot decently well, right? Not perfect, 35% from the field, not a ton of looks. It definitely trailed a little bit as things at time went on for him. So those two things, being able to at least start along those lines is a good news. I do feel like there's probably a ceiling for his game in terms of what he can ultimately be. Like there's not a ton of athleticism. It's like really hard to picture him being on the ball a lot more, right? Like it kind of felt like an adventure when he would dribble. And so I think with those things, it's definitely going to be a really long timeline. The thing that we dreamed on last year, though, was when you have like Kevin Durant, Kyrie, I mean, frankly, when they had Harden, you didn't need any other guys to be able to dribble or do anything else, like and score. And so
why examine whether or not this guy can handle the ball? He doesn't have to.
Right, exactly. At that point, you're just hoping for length and some switchability on defense, and maybe he bulks up. He definitely needs to get a little bit stronger. I mean, does that make sense to you? Does that kind of all ring along the same lines as where you were thinking? Because that's like my quick dime store assessment, not dime store. That's my quick assessment of where I think his game is right now. I'm not like, I don't project him to go to the moon, but I do like the floor.
Yeah. I think that the floor is definitely a lot higher coming in than maybe we anticipated. We liked him coming out of the draft, by the way, but it's always this thing with any of these prospects where until you see them on the court, you don't know, because things in college look a lot different on tape. Once you get up to the highest level of athletes playing at every single position on every single roster, all of a sudden some of your game gets exposed. To your point about, this is what I find interesting. I think when we talk about guys like Joe Harris on the roster, and that's kind of that same thing. Hey, run amok, spot up for the 3 ball, and now he's going to be a liability on the defensive end. Not a like for like. When we talk about just surrounding the talent on the roster, I think that's what you like about Kessler Edwards. Okay, he can do that thing offensively, and then he also has defensive upside. The other thing that I'll find interesting, it's like we saw this like 5 times last season where Kessler would put the ball on the deck and go to the rim, and it was like these weird fly. We were like, oh. Now it was a buildup, right? The kid needed a runway to get there. And I'll be very curious to see, because what you and I have mentioned a lot is the difference between first round and second round prospects is usually the athleticism, the quickness, the burst. That's what separates some of these guys. So if Kessler, you can't just get faster, but if he shows that maybe there's a fluidity there that came with some of the nerves and the adjustment to the NBA game, which we saw when he finally got a little sample size in the playoffs, he looked like he was a little bit shell shocked around it, right? So I think the confidence and coming in having a season underneath his belt, I'll be interested if some of the margin areas can improve for him. And then all of a sudden you say, the floor is nice. Now, how high can we push this ceiling if we think he has a little bit of slash ability playing off ball? Because the one thing, to your point, he's not going to be an on-ball guy for you, but the complementary parts of his game, how much can they improve as well?
Yeah, if you look at a shot chart from last season, it's basically what you would figure it to be. It was basically all 3-pointers and then standing directly under the rim. Like those were all the shots. He was not a great at the rim finisher. I mean, below league average. His opportunities are going to be like sort of like late in the shot clock, probably a few contests, or just like, if he was back cutting. Shot really well from one corner, 44% from the left corner, only 25% from the right. That's probably small sample size stuff, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. He did take a few more above the break threes than you probably would have thought, like for a guy that's mostly 3 and D. Mm-hmm. Some of that was just the nature of the Nets offense, the way they ran. They ended up taking sort of a lot of these above the break ones, mostly because their spacing sometimes stunk. So but in all, like he was pretty good there too, like 36 and 37%. Oh no, excuse me, that's not right. He was I was right. Yeah, 35 and 37% from above the break. So and you'll take that, and that's on like 61 attempts. So like I think you'll live with that, because those are considerably harder shots. So look, this is all to say we're happy with this Kessler signing. We wanted this to come back. When you get a guy like this, not a superstar, but definitely has already outplayed his draft slot. Like that is what you're looking for when it comes to guys like this. Like if you can outplay your draft slot significantly, like a second round pick coming in, giving you meaningful minutes on a decent team ish at times, like that's kind of what you want. So we'll talk about him a little bit more. We'll talk about the summer league stuff here in a second. First, going to talk to you about our friends over at Rock Auto. Save time, save money when using Rock Auto. Those are the two things you love to hear, especially if you're talking about auto parts, because you can go into those local chain places. It's a total adventure, disappearing into the cavern, just stacks and stacks of parts. You don't know if they're coming back with the right one. You don't know if they're just making the price up on the spot. It's a total adventure. None of that is a concern when you're using Rock Auto, where you can save 30 or even 50% more than the chains. Forget about the dealership. Jeez, I couldn't even think of it. I could barely even say it because I'm so disgusted by the thought of getting parts at a dealership. Forget about going to those places. Rock Auto is a family-owned business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years now. It's really easy. You go to rockauto.com right now. You see all the parts available for your car or your truck, right? Locked on in the How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car or truck will ever need. rockauto.com.
So just quickly on Kessler Edwards before we talk a little bit of G League, and I think the way that it makes sense is to talk about the three guys that were at the forefront of the Nets season last year, the three draft picks, obviously, in Cam Thomas, DAYRON Sharp, and then Kessler Edwards. The last thing was, though, really good timing. Obviously, Kessler Edwards has the ups, so he did a nice job on defensive boards, especially timing to crash the glass there and get some of those rebounds. That's important. And then remember, we're talking about the growth for him, and we had to remind ourselves this last year, talked about it when we looked at him as a prospect. He had to fix his shot because the shot motion was wonky coming out. And then when we saw him come in and play for the Nets, we went, now I thought that his shot was messed up and it looked pretty clean. So he already corrected that bad habit in a lot of ways, or the Nets were able to, build him up at the G League level and then at the NBA level. Now let's grow on that, right? Because you're talking about a guy that's still getting maybe his feet underneath him when it comes to new mechanics as well. So big positives for him. As we talk about then the summer league action, I mentioned expectations here. There's a couple other guys I want to get to, and I think DDJ is deserving of being mentioned here as well. But Cam Thomas, DAYRON Sharp, and Kessler Edwards, what are your expectations for them in summer league? Last year, Cam obviously exploded. He's jacking up game winners. DAYRON showcased, I think, somewhat the baseline skill sets are, but all three of these guys have been around to varying degrees, got NBA experience. Do they need to come into the summer league, and regardless of results for the team, these guys need to look crisp, right? Like they need to look like three players that are ready to be contributing consistently at the NBA level. I don't think that's so much to ask from Cam, but Kessler, you want to confirm it. And DAYRON needs to assert himself as a contributor that can be at the NBA level day one and getting big minutes.
Yeah, so I said yesterday that I think the first thing I was going to look for in terms of like how this broke down for the Nets in the summer league stuff, and it was going to be specifically watching Cam Thomas. And it wasn't going to be so much to like see what he can do, but I actually want to see what he doesn't do here. Because last summer it was very clear with the summer league that he was given whatever it was organizationally or just that squad, he was given the green light to essentially shoot every single time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes it looked awesome. Sometimes it was a mess. He had some, like you said, some big highlights. I think he ended up being like the co-MVP of the summer league when it was all said and done. Nice, but I'm not sure you hang that in the rafters. But like in terms of like, we already know Cam can do that, right? Like we've seen him being able to like sort of started the microwave score at the NBA level. It was super inconsistent. I really feel like I'll be a little disappointed if they start summer league here and it's just like the Cam Thomas show again with all these other guys. And I know that summer league can feel a little bit street ballish and it can feel a little bit like wide open, and defense isn't exactly at the top of everyone's priority list, but there is a part where, and it definitely favors guards, right? Because they're going to try to get their own. Everyone's trying to impress. I get it. Cam like does not need to impress in summer league the way that he needed to last year. I don't think, as like, hey, let me show you. Everyone slipped on my stock. Like I fell in the draft. All this stuff. Look, let's prove a point to whoever is gonna whoever passed on me. Mm-hmm. That's just not where he is now. Right? Like he's not at a part, like he showed he can like at least play in the NBA, right? Like, is he going to be a superstar? I'm not sure, but that part is beyond us now. I will feel, and we'll get to some of the other guys here in a second, but I will feel, I think, disappointed if the usage rate is just like through the roof again. Because he averaged last year in the summer league, he played 29 minutes a game and averaged 20 shots a game in 28 minutes. Like that's
right. He need not be doing that. He need not be doing that this year. No. You need to be showing that we've already checked the box. To your point, we checked the box. We know that you can.
Does
play.
That make sense?
No. Yeah. You're saying, can you? But yes, we all know a lot of guys can score. Can you be a contributor on a balanced team, on a 5-man rotation on the floor? Are you going to be able to be a part of that and get yours in what will be a much more realistic sample size? Right. I mean, with or without some of these superstars on this roster for Brooklyn, Cam Thomas shooting 20 times a game. Like, if you go in the youth movement direction, there's going to be a lot of guys that you want to see get value, a lot of guys that are going to be quality here. Yeah, he needs to eliminate the mistakes. I think, to your point about that street ball mentality of the summer league, sometimes, like, yeah, guess what? You're knocking it around, whatever, but every minute that you're on the floor, Cam, needs to look like you are thinking about when I'm playing in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center and being a key contributor for this team. No, I think you're 100% right on. There's a pretty high bar for what I expect to see from Cam Thomas.
And the bar is not that you can score, right? Like, this is what I want
Right.
to make sure we agree. I think we agree on this, but
Yeah.
like the bar is not that you can just go out there and just take 20 shots a game in 28 minutes. Because again, when you take 20 shots in 28 minutes, no one else is shooting. Like, no one else is doing anything. Again, it was awesome to watch last year. I think we all rooted for it. We did multiple podcasts at the time about how cool it was. He was taking over these games. It definitely did translate to the NBA level at times, not perfectly, but he was able to, the game winner against the Knicks, like, he was able to do this stuff on the NBA level. And I think that will continue to grow. We just don't need to see it in summer league now. Yep. Like, we need to see, like, the summer league is a chance for us to see other players. There's going to be other skill sets. I'm not calling it greedy because I definitely understand why players do this. You have to. It's like, if I was their agent, I'd be like, hey, never pass.
Buckets.
Right? Like do not, unless like your game is predicated on passing, and that's what everyone knows your skill is, and you need to really kind of like make sure everyone can see that. Other than that, take shots. Take shots. Like, try to show that you can score, because that's how we're going to get paid in this league. Remember, Cam's on a contract for $2.5 million this year. Team options for the next 2 years that could end up extending him. It seems like the trajectory right now would be that would happen. Like, I don't think that he would cost himself anything by taking a more team-oriented role in this offense this year, just to see it. So anyway, that's the first thing I'm looking for summer league this week.
Yeah. And I would make the case that he actually would help himself if he focuses on some of the areas in this summer league in terms of the long term with the Brooklyn Nets and getting a more sizable contract maybe sooner. Because, to your point, I want to see, how do you play off ball? Like, how are you functioning in offensive sets when you're not getting the shot, or when the ball isn't necessarily in your hands? I want to see that you can be a little scrappy on defense. We showed some of that a little bit in summer league last year. Got some steals. Remember, you're undersized. So when we've seen this last season, we saw Patty Mills, completely different players, but hey, you have the thick NBA body. So show that you can stay in front of a guy, show that you don't pick up some of the ticky-tack fouls. And that's hard in summer league because that's not the style of the play, but those are, I think it's the fundamentals that I want to see from Cam Thomas that allow me to go, okay, I understand not only that you're capable of it, but that you have the mentality and mindset, because that's going to be what's asked of you when we get to the regular season and you have, again, a healthy, balanced roster. So I think we're on the same page with him, and that's going to be the guy that we're focused on the micro level. Some of these other players, though, are intriguing as well.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about why also the way that the summer league team this year is constructed in a way, specifically around one player here, where Cam might not need to do this, and they may actually sort of run a slightly different sets than they ran last season. I think you're going to be on the same page with me on this one. First, going to talk to you about our friends over at Built Bar. You've heard us talking about Built Bar forever. It's super easy because Built Bar tastes amazing and it's super healthy for you. And when you can check those two boxes in terms of your health, you're almost all the way there in terms of making sure that you're eating something right. Built Bar has solved it. They solved it with the protein bar, and then they also have solved it with the puffs as well. These little puffs are covered in chocolate. They have the coconut brownie ones right now, the coconut brownie chunk puffs, and these things are absolutely amazing. So if you like the Built Bar, which I don't even want to hear from it if you don't, because again, these things come in the mail and the whole family's running for it. And I feel good about it because I know they're getting a good snack. The puffs are the perfect complement to what you're getting with the Built Bar. All Built Bars and puffs made with collagen protein, which makes sure your body absorbs them more efficiently. Tons of health benefits as well. The puffs, like I said, are running right alongside those. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off of your order. Use the promo code LOCKED15 at 15% off at built.com.
All right, so as we turn our attention to the summer league expectations, and I want to get back to your thought around the way this roster's been constructed. And by the way, just to go off the top here, the Nets are bringing guards. David Duke Jr. is going to be down there. You're also going to have Yaz Moore. You're going to have Alondes Williams. He's the post-draft signing there, along with obviously Donovan Williams, who's a guard forward. They're bringing Bryson Graham. They're bringing Cam Thomas, Kessler Edwards, Kaiser Gates, DAYRON Sharp, Noah Kirkwood. You also have Roquan Gray, who's a holdover there, or Raquan Gray, I should should say, who's a holdover from last year's post-draft signing as well. I think I covered everybody there.
You
And
say
talk about
Noah Kirkwood too?
yeah, Noah Kirkwood. Who did I miss? Oh, Yves Pons,
Yaspin,
right?
Ives
say that.
Pons.
Yeah, you can go ahead and Well, then Doug's the more of the linguistic here on the podcast.
Could be Eves.
Okay, but you have those 4 guards in there. Why does this set up for Cam Thomas to not have to do that thing he did last year?
Okay, so specifically Alondes Williams, right? Like this is the other guy that I really want to be able to see, and I think Nets fans do, because he's a really interesting player in that, okay, was not a huge prospect, goes really late because he doesn't have certain skills that translate to the NBA level. Like it's really hard to think. He's not a great shooter. Let's specifically, he's just not a very good shooter. And like when you're not in the NBA, when you struggle with shooting, even at the college level on multiple levels, like it's going to be hard to envision you like translating it 1-to-1, like poor shooting from the field, 70% from from the free throw line. And those just aren't great signs for your ability to shoot. You can improve on this stuff. This is, again, one of those things that you can coach into somebody, right? Unlike size and unlike strength, well, sometimes strength, but size and length, you can't coach into somebody. Shooting, you can actually coach into somebody. And we've seen it multiple times with multiple players. Like Lonzo Ball was not a great shooter coming out of college, and he overhauled it to be a really, really good three-point shooter. Alondes Williams is an excellent creator. Like an on-ball creator. He has very good vision. He can get to the rim, but he can also distribute. And this is a guy that just wasn't on the roster last year for Summer League for Cam, because Cam's like, hey, dribble the ball up and just jack up threes. Hey, and we'll see you at the end of the game, right? With Williams, and I don't know if he's going to start, but I suspect he will. And even if he doesn't, like they're going to give these guys, he's going to be a guy that gets run here because he's as close as it gets to like bringing in prospects.
Especially at 23 years old, right? Like this is a guy who's that's one of the factors around why he fell out of the draft is the age factor. So it's almost like, hey, if you're going to have value, you're going to show it immediately or it's not going to happen.
Yeah, we're going to know or we're not going to know. But he, like I said, he has that other stuff. He's 6'5", he's 210, he's got a wingspan, he can handle the ball. He did, even for a non-shooter, he scored 19 points a game last year at Wake, right? Like that is because he's able to get to the rim and do this other stuff. Like there is that athleticism there. Like if we're talking about like the difference with Kessler, like Kessler, we said there's not as, it's hard to like see the athleticism because there's not tons of athletic. Compared to NBA players. Like, of course, these guys would be the greatest athlete you've ever seen in your life. Like, you would write a book about it if you got to, like, stand next to him for 20 minutes while you were playing a game. So they're all athletic. I'm saying comparatively. Alondes has that athleticism, but the other stuff is super raw. But it complements Cam because he can do things that Thomas can't, like run initiated action, good vision, can find open shooters, can do this other stuff, can attack the basket and make defenses pay. This is a combination I'm very interested in watching. And I really hope we get lots of run of this because I do think complementary and even actually can probably defend guys that can't either. Right. So like there's a lot, I think from a complementary piece here, there's a lot to really kind of look forward to if the Nets decide to go this direction. And I really do think they will, because this is just the kind of guy you try to develop. And like you said, based on the age, see what you have right away and then call it yay or nay. Right. Yeah. But let's just see it. Like, let's see if some of this stuff at the college level translates.
Yeah. And I think, when you throw in a guy like David Duke Jr., who's going to be down there as well. Now, again, benefit for him is they got to see a little bit of him. I'm intrigued to see what he does. Now, I specifically look at him as kind of being the backup complement to whatever you're doing in your backcourt, potentially, right? To me, a two-way contract, will he get brought up at some point? But that also leans into the benefit from a Nets perspective and for Alondes Williams of saying, we know what we have in a lot of these guys right now. This is for you to show us what you're capable of. And in the non-superstar version of this team going into the regular season, to Alondes Williams next to Cam Thomas in the backcourt is not an unrealistic thing to start to maybe wrap your head around. And it starts here with what is the chemistry that these players develop with one another, and can they potentially show, we can work off of one another well together. Williams can set up Cam Thomas, and Cam Thomas can do the work off ball to be rewarded for that. The other thing I'll mention too is the other Williams that was taken there in Donovan. When you go look at his tape, the lankiness, he's a lean player. He has the ups. He can obviously, run on the floor, be a slasher off the ball. I'm so fascinated around, because I remember going back to like other versions of G League where I think this was true around Musa, where he had been playing and had been at the NBA level. And then one summer league, you turned around and you were like, this dude's getting beaten up a bit out there. And it all of a sudden you were like, boy, I don't know. I know we thought highly of this player, but a month or two, 6 months ago, now suddenly, because he's having a hard time against other quote prospects, this guy's bottom may be falling out from underneath him. So I'm curious about how does Williams hold up against it? And then you can even look back at a guy like Raquan Gray and say, you're a holdover from last year. This is your chance to check that box or maybe fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and remember, like it's hard to get extended looks at all these guys just because of the nature of the game. Like these games tend to devolve into whoever, like one, just the top prospects, or two, like whoever can get the ball enough. Like think back to when we watched DAYRON last year. It was like hard to get a good idea. It was like hard to get a good idea of really what he was going to bring because the game just isn't made for big men like him to shine. Now, if you watch like Chet the other night with OKC, like he actually can kind of shine here because one, like the defensive stuff already started to shine through even in the summer league stage, and he can actually handle the ball. Like he walked into an above the break three that was like, oh boy, like this guy's got it. He can do that stuff. Without those skill sets, it is actually hard to stand out in summer league because you actually just it's so simple. You kind of just have to be able to dribble. If you can't really dribble like some of these big guys, it's going to be tough. But it's also tough to shine with, just like I mentioned, some of those other guys. So while I want to see it from everybody, I think if we just use other years of summer league as the comp, we know in the end you're going to get good looks at like four guys.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's, it's more of Cam Thomas and Kessler Edwards and DAYRON Sharp, and then Alondes Williams, maybe a second Williams, and some confirmation around a Raquan Gray. I will say too that, and we're going to talk about this into Friday, even when the first summer league game will kick off for the Brooklyn Nets. We can even mention Kaiser Gates as being someone I'm curious about. He's 25 years old, but we'll talk more names. On DAYRON Sharp though, I am going to say one, everything that you can be dominant in summer league, you better be. And two, I remember, go back to when we talked to Candace Cooper, who covered him in college and said, can his shot develop? Yes. Will it happen immediately? No, I do. I want to see some shot from DAYRON Sharp because that is going to be a piece. He cannot just be a big body that can grab rebounds. We've seen plenty of iterations around that on the Brooklyn Nets with older players these last handful of years. So if you don't have the second facet to your game, that's going to be a problem. So got to showcase a little bit of that, and I'll be paying attention for it. I'm setting expectations that Doug probably thinks we shouldn't have, but darn it, I'm going to do it anyway.
No, it's all good. Like I said, I'm super excited to watch this game Friday. Like the first game is Friday, and I'm pumped to see it because I want to see those things that we just talked about. I think I was excited last year to see Cam. I'm excited to see some of these other guys because I think the Nets are still in a place where they need to be developing like 1 to 2 guys per year. Right.
Yes.
Like they still have to be on this trajectory. Like they can't just, we talked yesterday about like not going the Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge route anymore, going for some middle tier free agents, but they also still need to have it in the back of their minds. Like we need to try to land on something. And some teams have been better than others. Like Toronto's been really good at this, about just kind of find like a guy per year. Can we find a guy per year that
for
can play at the NBA level?
Every over the hill veteran, give me a younger prospect that has some upside. That's what the accomplishment should be. 100%.
100%. All right, we're gonna get out of here. 100%. We'll just do that for the next 4 minutes. 100%.
No, 100%.
All right, we're gonna get out of here. Make sure you hit like and subscribe over on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts as well. Free and available on every platform. Really appreciate all the comments we've gotten over there. So like I said, like and subscribe over on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, man, a lot of people have compared being an NBA rookie to being a fraternity pledge. It's not really as intense as all that. It's more like being an intern. CJ McCollum.
Oh, one of the all-time great poets. We will be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.